Flashback.
And the only thing I'm going to say about this game is only a 22-point spread? Really? I'm going to roll with the number one team in the country. There's no doubt about that. And by the way, that stadium is going to be a home game for Alabama. Moving on.
Several days later.
Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to continue our college football predictions with I believe this is week 7 in the college football season. Yes, it is week 7. And last week I went 15-12. My total season record right now, 62-46. Early this season, I said this year might be one of the most insane years of college football. I was not prepared on how well that statement has aged because last week, whew, it was chaos. And I think this week might be just as if not more chaotic than last week. But before we get to the games that might cause my theory, let's get this Friday night game out of the way. Starting off with Northwestern taking on Maryland. Northwestern, I can't recall what they did last week. I'm pretty sure they lost to Indiana. And Maryland, look, Maryland has been very kind of all over the place this year. I don't know if they're good or if they're bad. I feel like they're right in the middle. They are giving them 10 points. And usually when I said, you want to know how chaotic this year has been? Usually when I make these predictions, I always lean towards the home team on Friday games or Thursday games. Lately, this year have been testing my theory because a lot of road teams, underdog teams, have been winning these games. And with that being said, I am not going to take that bait just yet because Maryland is a double-digit favorite, but I will not be surprised if Northwestern wins. And that takes us right to the University of Utah taking on Arizona State, in which Arizona State beat Kansas last week on a last minute. I think they came from behind and win that game. Utah, last time we saw them, they lost to Arizona, but they had a bye week. Hopefully, they took some time to recover, heal up some wounds and stuff. And will Utah, could they get back in track in a very wide open Big 12 conference this year? I think they can. I'm going to roll with them to win. But again, at how chaotic this season has been, I just don't even know. Following that, we have the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets taking on the North Carolina Tar Heels. Georgia Tech ended the unbeaten ambitions of Duke. They actually came from behind to win that one. They were down 14-10 at one point, but they end up scoring 14 unanswered to get the win. And North Carolina, this is not a good year for you guys. A 3-0 start has now been losers of 3 straight. The defense looks awful. They can't stop a pass. They can't stop the run. The offense, I feel like they're not. I feel like they should be gelling way better than what they have been. And being a North Carolina Tar Heel fan in football, we're just waiting for basketball season at this point. This game is being played in Chapel Hill. But, however, Georgia Tech, winners of 3 straight against North Carolina, make it 4 straight. Following that, we have the Wisconsin Badgers taking on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Wisconsin put up 52 points against Purdue, which is honestly, that's not that hard to do. But 52 points is 52 points. Very impressive. And a week before, even though they lost to USC, they played way better than what they expected. Rutgers, on the other hand, they did lose a heartbreaker to Nebraska on the road. It was more so a defensive slugfest, if anything else. And they're actually giving them 2.5 points in this one. Interesting. But I am going to give the slightest of edges to Wisconsin on the road. I do like what momentum they have going. A lot of them written them down once their quarterback Tyler Van Dyke went down with the knee injury, but they've been playing better than anticipated. Hopefully Wisconsin could keep it up. And then we got the South Carolina Gamecocks taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide. And let's talk about South Carolina first, because they got blown out at home by Ole Miss. Only 3 points was scored. I thought South Carolina was going to do way better this year. And then Alabama, 22.5 point overdogs, if that's even a word. You go on the road and lose to the team that has been labeled the worst in the SEC for a good part of the last 5 years. How do Alabama lose to Vanderbilt? I know Las Vegas, they made a lot of money because fools like myself took that spread, even put more money than he usually does on bets, only for Alabama to lay a big fat egg. Now, how they lost, we'll save that for when I talk about Vanderbilt later on in this video. But let's just be known, they weren't number one for long. They won't. And South Carolina, brace yourselves. Hopefully, because like I said with Georgia last week, they're going to take on a very angry Alabama team. And so South Carolina, beware. But if Alabama loses again, we'll exercise that demon if it happens. And then we have the Clemson Tigers taking on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Clemson going on the road beating Florida State, which is honestly not that hard to do. And Wake Forest, they actually went on the road and won a game. They end up beating their in-state rivals, the North Carolina State Wolfpack, coming from behind to doing it. And for Wake Forest, this is basically a season-saving game. But 20 points underdogs to Clemson, and given that crowd will mostly be wearing purple and orange, I don't see any other scenario in which Clemson loses this game. But if they do, we'll just add on to the pile of chaos. Now we have the Washington Huskies taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Washington avenging their national championship defeat to Michigan, getting a win at home. Seriously, I don't know how to gauge Washington this year. Meanwhile, Iowa, they lost to the Ohio State Buckeyes in blowout fashion, in which, as no one, to the surprise of no one ever, the offense was ineffective and the defense did not have the athletes to match up with Ohio State. They are giving Iowa 2.5 points. I'm actually going to give them the slightest edge. I think this is not going to be an offensive shootout game. I think Iowa's defense will clamp down on Washington's offense. But hey, expect the unexpected. And then we have the Cincinnati Bearcats taking on the UCF Knights. In Cincinnati, they came off a bye week, but they lost a very high-scoring game against Texas Tech last time we saw them. And meanwhile, UCF went on the road against Florida, and they pretty much lost that game. A lot of people, like myself, would have took UCF to win, given the state of Florida. It basically saved their season. So, this game's being played in UCF. They have losers of 2 straight now, and they desperately need to get this one back on track. I do think they're going to win. They're at home. I like their odds to take this game and get the W. And now we have the California Bears taking on the Pittsburgh Panthers. For Cal, they held a 35-10 lead against the Miami Hurricanes, as they were the game of the week, only to have Miami come all the way back to steal a game. That game capped off one of the most chaotic weeks of college football. Pitt, on the other hand, a surprisingly 5-0, might be 6-0, probably 5-0. I think they're 5-0. They took care of the North Carolina Tar Heels on the road. First road win in that rivalry for the Pitt Panthers, and they're now ranked 23rd. Now, a wise YouTuber told me Never, ever, ever rank the Pitt Panthers. Because once they become ranked, they'll, that's when it will all fall apart. And I am, because of that small little theory that this unnamed YouTuber given me, I'm going to roll with the California Bears to win. It will not be surprising at all if they win. But Pitt, I don't know. I I don't know how to think about Pitt this year, even if they're still unbeaten. Go figure. And then we have the first possible candidate for game of the week, where we have the Penn State Nittany Lions taking on the USC Trojans. And Penn State, they got a home win over UCLA, shocker. And USC lost to Minnesota. Okay, that was actually shocking. I honestly don't know what really happened in that game. I know Minnesota kicked the game-winning field goal to seal it. No, they didn't kick a game-winning field goal. They went for the go-ahead touchdown to seal it, which was the right call to do. So in this game, oh boy, I think this is going to be one of the best games of the week. Playoffs, this might have playoff implications later down the line. And I'm torn on picking Penn State to win, but I have not been wowed by their offense yet at all. And because of that, I'm actually going to go with the Trojans at home to win. Meanwhile, we have Purdue taking on Illinois. Illinois is coming off a bye week. Purdue gave up 52 points against Wisconsin. I'm just going to go ahead and take Illinois to win. And what if you know, if Purdue wins, they'll win. And then we have the second candidate for a possible game of the week, in which the Texas Longhorns will take on the Oklahoma Sooners in a game that's known as the Red River Rivalry, the first rendition of this rivalry in the SEC. Texas had a bye week last week, but they took care of Mississippi State last time we saw them. And for Oklahoma, they pretty much handled Auburn. Well, they pretty much was handed a win against the Auburn Tigers. Now, when we see these two teams, scoring, wild finishes. That's pretty much sums up what this rivalry is. It's the one time the Cotton Bowl gets to shine during the season, and yeah, I think this game could be a fun one. But Texas, they're back at number one. Quinn Ewers, he's coming back after missing the last 2 games with the injury. He took the bye week to take more time to recover. He should be back at full strength. And it's just hard for me to go against Texas in this one. They're number one in the country for a reason. Also, with all the chaos that went down in the SEC, Texas had the best week of any SEC team had, and they had a bye week. Now we have the Louisville Cardinals taking on the Virginia Cavaliers. Virginia making a program statement win over Boston College, and Louisville losers of 2 straight, this time losing at home to SMU. Now this game being played in Virginia, I've been doubting Virginia for so long, but hey, they're 5-1 or either 4-1 or 5-1. I can't recall. But Louisville, I'm actually gonna take Louisville to rebound in this one. But I will not be surprised if Virginia pulls it off. And now we have another rivalry game with the Stanford Cardinals taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And this is actually kind of good news for the ACC because if you don't know, Notre Dame have to play 5 ACC schools a year, and with Stanford now joining, this rivalry will be fully protected under the ACC, under their little contract, whatever. Okay, whatever. But yeah, Notre Dame favored by 23.5 points. Stanford's not really that good, but I do think they're better than what their record indicates. Notre Dame right now is just the better team in this matchup. Sorry. And now we have the Arizona Wildcats taking on the BYU Cougars. Arizona, they lost to Texas Tech at home. and this was a 1 week remove of them getting a big road win over Utah. So Arizona right now, pretty inconsistent if you ask me. Meanwhile, BYU, they had a bye week, but last time we saw them, they took care of Baylor on the road. This game is going to be very interesting if you ask me. They are giving BYU 4.5 points in this one. I do think BYU is going to win this game, but I do expect this one to be very, very close. I'm going to try not to keep this brief, because last time I did that, I got burned. But looking at a 34-point spread and Georgia being at home, there isn't a scenario in hell where Georgia lays an egg in front of the home crowd. Just take care of what you have to do, Georgia, and move on to the next week. Then we have the third possible candidate for game of the week with the Ole Miss Rebels taking on the LSU Tigers. Ole Miss, after losing to Kentucky on the road at home, they went on the road and laid out all their rage for the University of South Carolina. LSU had a bye week last week, but let's just say they kind of thoroughly enjoyed it. Now this game's going to be played in Death Valley. Wait. This game's not being played at Death Valley. It's being played at Death Valley at night. So that environment is going to be insane to deal with. And pretty much, I know Ole Miss is favored by 3 points, but off of that alone, and given that LSU lost to Ole Miss last year, I gotta go with LSU for revenge. And now we have the Florida Gators taking on the Tennessee Volunteers. Florida, winners of 2 straight, beating UCF, basically saving their season and keeping Billy Napier's seat cool for the moment. Meanwhile, Tennessee, word of another victim of the chaotic SEC, losing to Arkansas on the road. And wow, and what an inopportune time to lose that game, given who they got next week. But that's another demon. We'll exercise that demon when we get to it. Tennessee is favored by a lot, but Florida, they're starting to find some confidence. I won't be surprised if this game is closer than expected, but I am going to pick Tennessee to win this game. And then we have the team of the week for last week, the Vanderbilt Commodores taking on the Kentucky Wildcats. And let's talk about Kentucky first because they're coming off, they had a bye week last week, and they're coming off of a game where a road upset win over Ole Miss. But Vanderbilt, against all odds, 22 to 23 point underdogs, hosted the number 1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide, and they walked out of that stadium with a W. Yes, Vanderbilt walked out of a game with a W. Who saw that coming? The last team in the SEC you would expect to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide, and they wound up doing it, never letting go of the lead. And it was a night not only for Vanderbilt fans to remember, but a night for college football fans to remember. And you know what? In this game, the Vegas are still undermining them. They're giving Kentucky a 14-point spread. But after what I saw last week, and given that the Vanderbilt quarterback, I think his name is Diego Pavia, he has 10,000 dogs in him, I'm not going to fall for it again. I'm rolling with Vanderbilt to win. Hopefully they're not that too high off of last week's game against Alabama. Hopefully this will add a little bit of momentum to a school that has been struggling in the SEC. But Vanderbilt, you know what, Vanderbilt? Thank you. Thank you for not only beating the Crimson Tide, but thank you for adding on the massive chaos known as college football 2024. But enjoy this victory while you can. And now we have the Iowa State Cyclones taking on the West Virginia Mountaineers. Iowa State, if I recall, they did had a home win over BYU. I mean, not BYU, Baylor. And West Virginia, I think they had a bye week last week because I can't recall what they did. They are giving Iowa State 3 points, but this game is being played in West Virginia. Yeah, I am going to pick the Mountaineers to win this game, but I think this one might be another fun game this year. And now we have the Syracuse Orange taking on the NC State Wolfpack. Syracuse went on the road last week in a game that I did not predict, but because it was a Group of 5 versus Power 4 game. But Syracuse went on the road and handed UNLV their first loss of the season. And they did so using overtime to get there. Meanwhile, NC State, they lost at home to Wake Forest. But before I could continue, let us give our thoughts and prayers out for Grayson McCall. He took a very, very scary hit in that game. A guy who has who have a history of injuries throughout his career. Hopefully, he will have a safe recovery. But in this game, NC State have actually been very, very underwhelming this year. And because of that, I'm going to give the slightest of edges to Syracuse on the road. But I will not be surprised if North Carolina State will win. And now we have the Minnesota Golden Gophers taking on the UCLA Bruins. Minnesota picking up a huge home win over USC. And that win right there, that was also a season-saving win for Minnesota. Meanwhile, UCLA lost on the road to Penn State. And again, they're a team in rebuild, so we don't expect too much for the Bruins. And with that being said, Minnesota shouldn't have a problem to win, but I will not be surprised. But hey, if UCLA wins, just say I will not be surprised. And then we have the Kansas State Wildcats taking on the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado had a bye week last week, but last time we saw them, they had a big win over UCF. And they were double-digit underdogs in that game. Kansas State, last time we saw them, I think they went on the road to beat Oklahoma State. They had a bye week last week as well. And they're actually giving Kansas State 4 points. So Colorado, they shouldn't be taken lightly in this one. But I am going to give the slightest edges to Kansas State. Only because I trust their offense and I trust their defense a little more against Colorado. Colorado, even though they had a good game on that side of the ball last week, 2 weeks ago, I think the Kansas State offense for them will be very, very tough to handle. And then we have our game of the week, the last game we're predicting in this video, with the Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the Oregon Ducks. This is a number 2 ranked Buckeyes versus a number 3 ranked Oregon Ducks. How is Oregon ranked number 3 again? But that's beside the point. Ohio State had a big home win over Iowa. It was not that hard how they did it. And Oregon had a Friday night win over Michigan State where, okay, Dillon Gabriel, he did struggle a bit. But when he struggled, Oregon made up for it in the running game. And they ran the ball very, very well against the Spartans. This game is being played in Autzen Stadium. College Game Day will be at this game. And hopefully ESPN will give this game the same treatment they gave Alabama and Georgia. Because the stakes in this one, they're pretty huge. Now for me, picking this game, I know Autzen Stadium is a very, very tough place to play on any given Saturday. But I have not been fully wowed by the Oregon Ducks yet. This is their big chance to do it. But for right now, I got to go with the Ohio State Buckeyes to win. This should be a very, very good game. And expect fireworks in this one. And that concludes the Week 7 predictions. Tell me what y'all think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please gamble safely. Don't be a nut like I was last week. And I'll see you next time.